A topic or a general trend which I think has been fairly well won over in terms of experts and fans and even now teams, which is the idea that the different regions, especially the West, NA and EU, have to be able to look for the new talent in the scene, and rather than sticking to old players who maybe are past their prime or they're just okay now and they're never going to have any more upside to be great, you have to try and embrace the new talent and figure out where it fits and whatnot. But I feel like people have taken this notion of like embracing new things and being open to it, and they've gone too far the other way with it. And they've gone to the idea of like, let's try everyone out and let's get rid of all the old players and let's get all these new players. And you know what? Let's go further than that. Like, it's one thing to say, let's find the talent and then bring it into these teams, and it might be able to fit and it might be good once you give it some experience. But then people go with the idea of like, well, no, we don't need to find the talent. We can just develop talent. If we can get someone even with meager talent and we have coaches and team houses and we play them in games, they'll learn how to become pros and they'll become the great players of tomorrow. Not so sure that actually works. And so the reason why I bring this up is because, and the most extreme example of it is when people suggest that you could, if you had the right coaching structure and whatnot, you could actually get players who were like not even challenger level, like diamond players. I've even heard people go as far as to say like high platinum players. If they just had a bit of talent or they just had something and the right attitude, then a coach could take them and mold them and develop them. And eventually that player would become the next Expeke. This player would become the next Faker. This player would become the next whatever, Meteos. We could develop these great players because the coaching would develop them. First of all, in terms of like taking those sorts of players, the precedent for taking low-level solo queue players is basically non-existent. Like, the only examples I can think of is like Meteos, just because he didn't used to play solo queue, he used to play normals, he didn't play ranked because he had super high ping and he just played with friends. And obviously then there was no time for him to play ranked larks, and he got into Cloud9, then they became gods. Then we've also got Diamond Prox. Diamond Prox is the one that's nearly always cited. And the thing with Diamond Prox is, it's because back in season 1, he was only at like 1800 elo. And when people hear that, 1800 elo, people, that would like translate now to like platinum or whatever. What you have to realize is the elo system was different back then. Like 1800 elo season 1 is probably like 2100 elo season 2. So actually that's not platinum. That's probably like in the diamond area. In fact, maybe it's even like diamond 2 or something. So first of all, it's much higher than platinum. And secondly, you can't use Diamond Prox as that. Diamond Prox is a massive outlier. First of all, part of the reason why he joined, if you know the story of Moscow 5 and Empire, is that Gosu Pepper knew Diamond Prox, had been duo queuing with him, and then when Gosu Pepper Edward joined M5, he said to Alex, like, listen, if I join, you have to kind of like help me and Diamond Prox out, because he's like a player who only plays 2 champions in the jungle, like he hasn't got much experience, like you have to kind of like help us out, like give us tips or show us what to do. And so the idea is, Alex Ich, who himself had been a jungler, kind of helped them out a bit, like he got them up to speed, or he maybe give them pointers. Well, think about Diamond Prox and Alex Ich would go on to have one of the most legendary jungle mid synergies of all time, one of the most successful as well, especially in the West, the most successful in the West. Then you add in that since he used to be a jungler, well, if you remember the story, I wrote this in my article, End of an Era, about Moscow 5. The story that Diamond Prox himself said as to how he developed his counter-jungling style was that he watched a stream of Alex Ich jungling, and Alex Ich counter-jungled the enemy and went into his jungle and started like bullying him around, taking buffs, and Diamond thought to himself like, I wonder if you could just do that all the time. I wonder if you could just pick the right champions and that would work all the time. And that's basically the genesis of what the Diamond Prox then took that notion and then did it in his own way, and he revolutionized jungling and did it a totally different way. And so the crucial thing to understand here is Diamond Prox is a once in a generation, once in a lifetime amazing jungle talent. You're not just going to find those everywhere lying around. If you take 10 of these guys who in this world are platinum, let's be reasonable, let's say like Diamond 2, junglers, and then put them in there and give them all the coaching in the world, give them any coach you want, get them fucking Coma from SK Telecom, they're not ever going to turn into a Diamond Prox. In fact, they won't even come close. Very likely, they're not even going to be very good. They might just be like what they are, Diamond 2 jungler. They might develop a little bit. They might learn, I have to go here. Is this fixing my pathing a bit? Is this where I'm going to go? Very unlikely they'll become an elite level player. So don't use outliers to try and explain a general principle. It's the same as when someone says something and uses the case of Cloud9 or Faker. If you talk about Faker, let's use the same logic that these people are using then. We'll just take every single solo queue god and just build a team around him and they'll become the best in the world and win the world championship. Well, of course they won't. Faker is the best player ever, so he's a massive outlier to that. The majority of other players that they tried this with didn't work. They tried that with Marin, didn't particularly work. SK Telecom S wasn't that good. Think of all the other cases. Likewise, Cloud9. Cloud9's always used as the example when people say, if a good challenger team's doing well, don't change any players and don't upgrade to a better player from LCS. Stick together. Friendship's the key. It's not friendship that made Cloud9 the gods. Again, as a team, this is a once-in-a-lifetime team that appears. Think about it. In terms of all-time great instant synergies of 5 players who you never change and they always somehow get it together and do this amazing intuitive style, you've only really got 2 teams ever from the West. You've got Moscow 5 and you've got Cloud9. That's a massive outlier. You take other teams just from Challenge and then put them into LCS wholesale and don't ever change players. And even if they're doing badly, don't change because friendship's the power and all that shite. They'll never become good. It's very unlikely they'll ever even finish top 3. You need to figure out where to upgrade at positions. You need to make the hard decisions. Well, this guy's my friend, but this player would suit us better and give us a better chance to win. You need to have this approach. Don't use outliers to try and prove a general principle. That's the whole point of why they're outliers. You're supposed to ignore them when you're talking about the general principle. Now then, in terms of this idea that also, that's why I said at the beginning a difference between finding talent, or like obtaining the talent, searching out the talent, navigating the scene, figuring out who is the talent, then just bringing them into a team and just giving them, basically, they're already got the talent. You're just giving them the chance, and then maybe they're good and they'll show us. It's very different to say you're going to develop talent. The idea that you're just going to get someone and then you're going to take them and you're going to sit them down here and then you're going to do what? What is this coach going to do? What do people think that like Coma did with Faker, or what do they think they do with Piglet, or what do you think the MVP coaches did with Mata? They didn't sit them down and go, listen, I know that you're pretty good in solo queue, but you don't really know how to play the game. So this coach guy who's like 35 or something, I'm going to now teach you like how to be mechanically brilliant and just outplay them. And then I'm going to teach you like incredible intuitive decision making that sort of like no one can even understand until after the fact when they slow the videos down. I'm going to teach you a kind of mental state where you can't be broken and you have. They don't teach you any of these things. That's why I made the point in that video that where I referenced Doublelift's principle, where he said that Korea could just find the Faker and then they make him into a god. I say they don't. I say that coaches don't make great players into gods. They just, maybe they polish off a few of the little rough edges, but the great player, he's already got all the talent and the skill there. And if he puts in the time, then he becomes the great player. He just needs the opportunity. What coaches do is they take the okay player and they don't turn him into a god. They just figure out how to make the okay player work in the team. So in the okay player, maybe they have to tell him like, listen, I don't want you to do this, just do this instead. And he's not then going to become a god at that role, but he'll become more effective within the team. And now you can build a team this way. But the great players, the stars, to a degree, people play around them. You don't jam them into a position and tell them how to play and teach them and all this stuff. The teaching and the rest. Teaching, I've always thought to a degree, the best players, and this is a general principle in life, the best things in life in terms of teaching are self-taught. It's something where it just makes sense to you and you follow the right track and you set your own agenda and your own curriculum and you learn and that makes sense. Then you move on to the next piece. And because you're teaching yourself, you understand the principles as they're coming along, because to get to the next principle, you have to be able to understand it. Teaching is there for when people get stuck and they just need a little bit of help. Like, I can't really understand that. Someone can maybe go like, oh, here's a pointer. Does that help? And if it helps, then it's like someone pointing like, oh, go that way. But they don't force you that way. They don't drag you along. They point that way, and if you can figure out, oh, that makes sense, then you go that way. It's not like they actually like teach you everything and then teach you the next decision making of when you'd make this next thing. They can just sort of throw you a bone, and then if you have again, it's opportunity. They can give you opportunities. So the reason why I make this point is because it's going too far to suggest you can just get solo queue players and develop them into these gods. It's not going to happen. And the problem with that is, I think it's actually quite dangerous, because it goes into this realm where then people start to think that like top teams like a Fnatic or Alliance, it's fine for them to gamble on unproven players instead of like established talent. So actually, if you put them in the right order and then you put the support players around them, could be even better than their previous teams were. Instead, people think that, yeah, you should just gamble on all and get these new players in and maybe one of them's a god. That's exactly why I've made this point, because that's not what should be happening with the elite teams. There's actually a great structure here. You know who should be getting those people who potentially have some talent in solo queue and giving them a try? Challenger teams. And then challenger teams, we can see what's going on there. If not challenger team, low LCS teams. We now have 10 teams in each LCS. So those bottom 2 teams, go ahead. If you wanted a new player, rather than just get a bad pro level player who's played some LCS, yeah, for you it makes sense to gamble on him, because you weren't going to get much upside from the other player, whereas the upside of this guy's maybe really big, and if you did bad, you're already a bottom 2 or 3 team anyway. And crucially, that's how this hierarchy will exist, because then if a player comes along and he is like a forgiven type guy and he's in a lower team but he plays very well, then it catches the attention of the above teams, and that's the way it should work. A team like a Fnatic should never need to gamble on low-level players or unproven players, because crucially, with the way the scene works, they should be able to look at these other players and they should be able to go, right, okay, just forgive them, want to play again, right, come play for us. We're a world-class team, we've got a lot of money, we've got all the organisation. You haven't got a top team, right, we'll have forgiven before SK got him. Oh, okay, who else can we have? Well, Jankos has never hit the absolute peak, he's never made a final. Right, we'll take Jankos as well. they take the players from the teams below them. That's how pro sports work. The big teams don't make the gambles in general. In general, they sign talent for top dollar because they know what they're going to get from it, and that's how it works in their team. So that's the way it should work. The elite teams should be signing the players that are proven, that are good. They just need the opportunity, and then they're going to be great players because they're already very good. They don't have the teammates to make them great. The teams that should be taking these gambles are the ones in the next level below, like this Tier 2 LCS, Tier 3 LCS at the bottom, then Challenger people. Then naturally, the cream will rise to the top. It will make sense. And this is actually an area where, if this is done properly, the West would be ahead of Korea, just in terms of how this process would work effectively. Because actually, this is an area in Korea I've always criticized. But because of how Kesper works, and some of the really ridiculous rules on the kind of contracts that you could have over there, and the social, let me think how you'd say, kind of the social implications of, like, if you join a team and you were a nobody when you join the team and then you become successful, it is sort of implied that, like, you kind of owe it to that team and you should be loyal to that team, and how dare you consider moving. So if you're a good player and you join just a medium team, if you're a star, they're never going to get rid of you because you're really good. They're going to keep trying other people around you. They won't let you just go to SK Telecom and become the new AD carry there. They won't let you go to CJN to become the new jungler there. That in general is not going to happen. And so what's funny is Korea actually isn't very good at having a hierarchy like I described there. They don't have the most effective system. What Korea does is they're the best at getting those guys where it doesn't work most of the time. They get the solo queue god, they get the rising talent challenger god. They try all of those guys. That's what all the top teams do when they need a new player. They try those gods. The difference is, in the West, we just try them and we let them fail for like a split and a half. We maybe even just, like, if they do okay, we just keep them around and they stick around there. What Korea's very good at doing is kind of getting that guy in, and almost like a job interview. They give him a few games, and after a few games, they can either tell, like, he hasn't got it, or he doesn't fit our team, or they kind of demand that he has to have it in that time period, because if not, they'll go straight to another guy and they'll try him, and if not, they'll go straight to another guy, and eventually they're going to get to someone who within a few games will manifest that time. Where he gets the opportunity, he makes the most of it. He doesn't need to be molded and shaped and all this. We've seen loads of Korean talents when they have the best coaches in the world, remember, who had lots of talent and they never were developed. Like Mom's never been developed into some god. He's had all these seasons. And now that some players have left the scene, and now that he's in a position where he's playing a lot of opponents who have mixed up teams, now he can shine a little bit. But he always had this talent, and everyone said he had all that. Well, why are these coaches who are geniuses not able to develop him? We've seen this with lots and lots of players. It's only the outliers, the rare ones who look like they've been developed in this way. In reality, the great players aren't like that. So I think it's just... This isn't arguing for or against what people should do here. In general, the way the scene's developing, I think, will be like a hierarchy like this. But I just think the way that we frame it in our minds when we have these debates, it's not as black as white as, like, ignore all talent, or like every talent is worthwhile and throw out everything established. Let's just gamble on every new person. It's not as crazy as one or the others. There's nuances here, there's subtleties. And I think it's important for people at different levels, even if you're just a fan or somebody who's trying to be an expert, trying to be knowledgeable about the game, be informed. It's important to think about how we frame things before we just push all the data in there, because otherwise we're going to end up thinking naive things like, oh, well, if Diamondprox was 1800 elo and then he became the best jungler ever, then we should just try out all these platinum junglers and eventually, we're going to strike gold and get one. You never will. As in, you could try like 100 and you're not going to find a Diamondprox. That's just facts.